People often say motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we should bathe every day. Zig Ziglar. Motivation that fuel humans so often worship as a miraculous source of energy is actually far more fragile than we imagine. It is not an eternal flame, but merely a fleeting spark that lights up our will for a moment, yet cannot sustain the long, winding journey ahead. Humans were not born to remain in a state of constant, unbroken inspiration. Our minds operate in natural cycles. Just as the body needs cleansing each day, the spirit also demands to be washed by repeated sources of inspiration. Skip bathing for just one day and discomfort begins to creep in. After a few days, stagnation and self-doubt start to close in. Motivation works the same way. When not renewed, it doesn't vanish suddenly, but quietly fades, leaving behind a hazy space filled with hesitation and self-doubt. Many people mistakenly believe motivation is the cause of action, when in truth, it is often the result of repeated actions. Just as you don't wait for inspiration to bathe, but treat it as an essential daily habit, motivation should be nurtured as a daily ritual, not an emotion we passively await. When you proactively bathe your mind through small actions, turning a page in a book, completing a task, or simply beginning, you skillfully awaken the inner flow of energy. Once you truly understand its fickle nature and still choose to move forward, motivation ceases to be a rare miracle. It becomes a ritual. And the true power of that ritual lies not in any single act, but in the quiet persistence of repeating it every day, until you yourself become the most enduring source of motivation in your own life. Mastering life is not a question of control, but of finding balance between the person we show the world and our true self. Eckhart Tolle. People often try to grip every variable tightly, forcing everything to follow the exact path they desire. Yet the harder we try to control, the more we resemble someone clutching sand in their fist. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. In truth, the deeper essence of mastering life lies not in the power to dominate, but in the subtle harmony between the person we present to the outside world and who we truly are at our core. Within every human being flow two parallel currents. One is the social self, shaped by expectations, roles, and external pressures. The other is our original essence, the place that holds our core values, authentic emotions, and inner voice. When these two currents fall out of rhythm, we fall into a state of endless tension, like a musical instrument strung too tight or too loose. Either it snaps or it cannot produce a clear sound. But when they are tuned in perfect harmony, life resonates like a complete symphony, where every action is no longer a heavy burden, but a natural, graceful expression of who we truly are. This balance is not a static state, but a continuous process of adjustment that never stops. Sometimes we must lean toward reason to lead the way. Other times we must step back to listen to our deepest intuition. Like a tightrope walker, mastery is not about standing perfectly still, but about making subtle shifts to maintain balance without falling. It is precisely within those skillful adjustments that we gradually come to understand. Control only creates an illusion of safety, while true balance grants us authentic and profound freedom. When you stop forcing life to obey your will and instead learn to flow alongside it, understanding yourself, accepting yourself, and adjusting with flexibility, that is when you are no longer merely existing, but truly mastering life in the deepest and most enduring way. The essence of self-discipline is doing what is important rather than what is urgent. Werner. Self-discipline is often seen as a form of self-punishment, a fierce inner battle between want and must. Yet its true nature is not harshness or severity, but the refined ability to distinguish clearly, knowing when to firmly turn away from what is urgent in order to focus on what is truly important. Because what is urgent is always loud and pressing, like an alarm bell ringing relentlessly, pushing us to react immediately. Meanwhile, what is important remains quiet and patient, never rushing or demanding, yet it is precisely what shapes a brilliant future. We easily get swept into the whirlpool of tasks that demand immediate attention, messages that must be answered right away, small chores that must be finished, urgent requests from the outside world. All of these cleverly create the illusion of productivity, making us so busy that we convince ourselves we are constantly progressing. In reality, they are only superficial movements, like someone rowing furiously inside a whirlpool. The harder they row, the deeper they are pulled into the endless spin. Self-discipline, therefore, is not about doing more, but about having the courage to pause, look farther ahead, and prioritize long-term value over things that only demand fleeting attention. This requires a special kind of inner strength, the ability to patiently endure delayed rewards. When you choose to spend time learning a new skill instead of endlessly scrolling on your phone, when you choose to build a solid foundation instead of tinkering with trivial tasks, you are bravely going against the brain's instinct to seek instant gratification. That is not painful sacrifice, but a wise investment, where the results do not come immediately, but quietly accumulate, silently building, until they explode into a magnificent leap forward. Self-discipline is not about fighting the whole world, but about a deep awakening so you are no longer deceived by things that only pretend to be urgent. It is the subtle art of prioritization, where you learn to listen to what is truly important even when it makes no loud noise. And when you are steadfast enough to always choose those things, you not only master your own actions, but also shape the magnificent direction of your entire life. There is no lasting success without dedication. Tony Robbins. Success, if built only on fleeting excitement or scattered efforts, is like a structure erected on sand. It may look impressive for a moment, but sooner or later it will be swept away by time and change. Value is not determined by speed, but by the depth of commitment. Dedication is not about working harder, but about working with complete presence. It is the moment when you stop dividing your attention among dozens of trivial things and pour all your energy into what you have chosen. In that state, work is no longer an obligation, but an extension of yourself, like an artist merging into their creation, or a skilled craftsman feeling every detail through their hands. It is this connection that creates quality, and only quality can stand firm against the tests of time. Dedication is also the expression of a long-term commitment, a silent promise you keep with yourself. Without dedication, people easily chase novelty, constantly jumping from one goal to another, thinking they are seeking better opportunities, yet actually losing the depth needed for true growth. On the other hand, when you stay long enough with something, pushing through boredom and doubt, you begin to touch layers of value that the majority never reach. Dedication is not an innate quality, but a choice repeated every day. Choosing to stay when things get difficult, choosing to dig deeper when others quit, choosing to continue even when no one is watching. And it is precisely within that quiet perseverance that success stops being a fragile destination and becomes an inevitable outcome, lasting, solid, and carrying the profound mark of who you truly are. You cannot swim to new horizons until you have the courage to leave the shore. Humans constantly long for new horizons, better versions of ourselves, wider opportunities, lands we have never set foot on. Yet we want to reach all of them without ever leaving the familiar safety of the shore. Every real step forward begins with separation. The shore here is not merely a physical place, but a symbol of familiarity, old habits, limiting beliefs, comfort zones that make us feel protected. There, everything is predictable and low risk. But it also means no expansion. Leaving the shore is not an impulsive act, but a conscious decision. Accepting to step into water whose depth is unknown, where you are no longer certain of control, yet have the chance to discover your true capabilities. Fear does not lie in the ocean, but in the moment you let go of the shore. That is the second when you must face uncertainty, the feeling of being lost, and the possibility of failure. Yet it is also in that very state that hidden abilities begin to awaken. Just as the body only learns to swim when there is no longer ground beneath its feet, humans only truly grow when placed in circumstances that force adaptation. Courage is not the absence of fear, but acting even while fear is still present. You do not need to be certain you will reach the new horizon. You only need enough bravery to leave the shore. And once you are in the middle of the ocean, each stroke gradually replaces doubt. Each experience slowly builds confidence. In the end, you realize that what has changed is not just your position on the map, but you yourself. Stronger, more open, and no longer bound by the borders of your original safety. If Plan A doesn't work, the alphabet still has 25 more letters. 204 letters if you're in Japan. Claire Cook. People often place far too much expectation on Plan A, as if it were the only path to success. When it fails, the feeling is not just disappointment, but total collapse, as though the entire foundation of hope has been pulled out from under us. Failure is merely a comma in a system of possibilities far wider than our limited imagination. Clinging tightly to a single plan reflects our need for control and our fear of uncertainty. We want to believe that if we just stay on the right track, everything will go smoothly. But life does not move in a straight line. It is more like a maze, where every dead end is not a failure, but information. Plan A not working does not mean you are completely wrong. It simply means you have just eliminated one possibility that was not right for you. And it is precisely this process of trial, error, and adjustment that brings us closer to what is truly right. The 204 letters of human possibility are not limited by a few initial choices. Just as language can be formed from hundreds of different characters, life can be rewritten in countless ways. Flexibility of mind, the ability to change direction without losing sight of the goal, is the highest expression of practical wisdom. Do not let one wrong choice paralyze the entire journey. When you accept that there are always other letters left to try, you free yourself from the pressure of perfection and step instead into a state of discovery. And in that state, every failure stops being proof of limitation and becomes a sign that you are genuinely moving forward. The future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. Robert Greene. In a world that never stops changing, where today's knowledge can become obsolete in just a few years, possessing a single skill is no longer enough to create lasting advantage. It is no longer about being the best in one field, but about being able to connect different pieces to create something others have never imagined. Learning many skills not only expands what you can do, but also reshapes the way you see the world. Each skill is like a new lens that lets you view the same problem from different angles. When these lenses intersect, creative thinking begins to emerge, not as a random flash, but as the natural result of accumulation and connection. Just as someone who knows both music and technology can create unique digital products, or someone who understands psychology and business can build far more persuasive strategies, the core point is not the number of skills, but how they are blended. If you learn without connecting, you are merely piling up knowledge. But when you start seeing relationships between things that once seemed unrelated, you step into a higher level of thinking, where creativity is no longer the privilege of a few, but the result of a conscious process of training. The future does not belong to those who know the most, but to those who keep learning continuously and restructuring what they know. That is the journey of personal evolution, where you never stop expanding, never stop connecting, and ultimately create a completely unique version of yourself, formed from the intersection of many different abilities. You must learn a new way of thinking before you can master a new way of living. Marianne Williamson. People often crave changing their lives from the outside, a new job, a new environment, new habits, yet overlook a deeper layer, the structure of thinking that quietly controls every behavior. Action is not the starting point, but the result of how you interpret the world. Every person lives inside an invisible operating system, a collection of beliefs, assumptions, and perspectives formed over time. If that operating system does not change, every effort to change behavior is like installing new software on an outdated platform. It may work for a while, but sooner or later it will clash and collapse. Learning a new way of thinking is not about absorbing more information, but about reprogramming how you understand yourself, failure, ability, and limitation. This process is not easy because it requires you to question the very things you once believed were true. It is like dismantling each brick of a familiar house in order to rebuild it from the foundation. inconvenient, unsettling, yet necessary. When you begin to see challenges as learning opportunities instead of threats, mistakes as data instead of judgment, you are not only changing your thinking, but opening an entirely new space for action. And then, the new way of living is no longer something you have to force yourself to maintain, but becomes a natural consequence. Once thinking has changed, behavior adjusts by itself, like water flowing according to new terrain. You are no longer struggling to become a different version of yourself, but simply living in alignment with a more mature cognitive structure. And it is within that quiet yet profound shift that your life begins to change in a lasting and irreversible way. Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. People are often obsessed with perfection, a smooth, flawless state with no scratches or mistakes. Value does not lie in surface perfection, but in inner essence. A pebble may be perfectly smooth and round, yet it carries none of the rarity or weight within. Meanwhile, a diamond, even with cracks, even imperfect, is still the crystallization of pressure, time, and harsh conditions that not everything can endure. Flaws and scratches in character or journey are not signs of inferiority, but evidence of experience. A person who has never made a mistake may appear perfect, but often lacks depth, like that pebble with no story, no inner weight. On the other hand, someone who has stumbled, failed, and endured pressure, even with flaws, possesses a value that smoothness cannot replace: maturity. Accepting yourself as a diamond with flaws helps you stop chasing the illusion of perfection, the very thing that makes people delay action out of fear of being wrong or not good enough. When you understand that value lies in essence and the process of formation, you begin to allow yourself to try, fail, and learn. And it is within that process that the cracks stop being weaknesses and become unique veins that create your own distinctive identity. Becoming a version of yourself that has value, even if imperfect. Because in the end, the world does not need more identical smooth pebbles, but diamonds, different, deep, and carrying within them the story of pressure, transformation, and light. Nothing is less productive than making the wrong things more efficient. Peter Drucker. People often take pride in being busy, in their ability to optimize work, in making everything faster, better, more efficient. Efficiency is not the same as value. You can become extremely skilled at completing meaningless tasks, but that does not move you forward. It only makes you go in the wrong direction faster. We gravitate toward tasks that are easy to finish, give quick feedback, and create an immediate sense of control and achievement. These are often pseudo-urgent activities, replying to emails, handling small details, optimizing minor processes. When we do them efficiently, the brain rewards us with a feeling of productivity, making us believe we are making progress. But in truth, it is only a clever loop of procrastination, where we avoid what is truly important but more difficult by staying busy with things that are not truly necessary. Like someone rowing with perfect technique, but heading in the wrong direction. Every stroke is powerful and precise, yet the harder they row, the farther they drift from the real destination. In this case, efficiency is not an advantage. It is an amplification of the original mistake. And the most dangerous part is, you don't realize you're wrong, because you are doing it so well. The true nature of efficiency does not lie in doing things faster, but in choosing the right things to do. It is a form of cognitive discipline, daring to ask before acting, is this worth optimizing? When you learn to eliminate what is unnecessary instead of improving it, you not only save time, but also free up energy for what truly matters. It is not about becoming a perfect work machine, but about becoming someone who can clearly distinguish between motion and progress. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do is to stop doing the things that aren't worth doing, instead of trying to do them better.